When people imagine World War II soldiers, the picture that comes to mind usually shows helmets, rifles, and endless marching columns. But, the truth is that the greatest enemy was not always the one firing across the battlefield. Hunger, freezing nights, exhaustion, and illness claimed countless lives, and every soldier knew that surviving the daily grind of war meant more than just training and bravery. Hidden behind official accounts were dozens of improvised hacks soldiers relied on, tricks that were rarely spoken about to civilians. These secrets were passed hand to hand in foxholes, trenches, and camps, shaping the daily survival of men who often had little more than ingenuity to keep them alive. What makes them so fascinating today is how relevant they remain, offering timeless lessons in human resilience. Turning cans into life-saving stoves, metal ration tins were never thrown away in wartime. Soldiers discovered that with a bit of clever shaping, a simple can could be transformed into a makeshift stove. By piercing holes and feeding in twigs, paper, or a bit of solid fuel, they created a portable source of heat. These stoves could warm hands, dry wet socks, and even heat rations discreetly without the giant smoke trails of open fires. On battlefields where revealing a position could mean death, this trick was a silent lifesaver. Many civilians never knew soldiers were quietly adapting their trash into survival tools, but this habit of turning waste into utility is one of the clearest examples of battlefield ingenuity. Body heat as a shield against the cold. In the frozen forests of the Ardennes or the icy Russian steppe, staying warm was a daily war. Soldiers discovered quickly that body heat was one of the most reliable defenses against frostbite. Men slept pressed together, back to back or side by side, with greatcoats spread to form a shared barrier against the cold. They used dugouts, hay, and even the earth itself to trap warmth, insulating trenches with whatever material they could find. To civilians reading newspapers back home, it seemed soldiers were simply braving the cold. What wasn't reported was how much their survival depended on the simplest act of sharing body heat in order to outlast the night. Extending rations with fieldcraft was, honestly, a daily necessity. Military rations were designed to keep men alive but, well, not always satisfied. Hunger was constant, and soldiers became experts at stretching their supplies in ways that were rarely shared outside the front. Bits of stale bread were boiled into broth just to make them filling again. Crushed hardtack mixed with water became a kind of porridge. Some units even soaked coffee grounds twice to extract every possible drop. Foraging filled the gaps when luck allowed, but the real art was in stretching what little they had to feed more mouths for longer. Civilians back home endured rationing, but they never knew just how much soldiers squeezed every calorie out of what they were given. Improvised water purification was honestly a matter of survival. Clean water was never guaranteed, and drinking from streams or puddles often meant disease. Soldiers had to improvise fast solutions. They filtered water through cloth to remove debris, then boiled it in makeshift containers when fire was possible. In some desperate cases, they used charcoal from campfires as crude filtration, a trick that could remove some impurities and improve taste. While militaries eventually issued purification tablets, many men survived only because of their quick thinking with whatever was at hand. Civilians at home had no idea how often soldiers drank unsafe water and relied on these quiet hacks to stay alive in environments where illness could spread faster than bullets. Socks, feet, and the marching secret. Every soldier knew that the condition of his feet could decide whether he could keep marching. In cold or wet campaigns, socks were as precious as ammunition. Soldiers dried them over bodies at night, tucked them under shirts, or rotated pairs constantly to prevent trench foot. Sometimes, when there were no dry socks left, soldiers would actually stuff grass or straw inside their boots to soak up the moisture. These small, almost invisible habits really kept the men moving, especially when frostbite or infection could have crippled entire units. Civilians were usually told about the heroic advances and retreats, but not much about the unseen nightly rituals soldiers performed just to make sure they could even walk into battle the next morning. Camouflaging smell and smoke was, honestly, a constant concern. Cooking or even lighting a fire became dangerous when enemy scouts were nearby. So, soldiers learned to disguise the smoke and smell of food by burning small, controlled fires inside pits covered with earth or branches. These so-called smokeless fires reduced visibility and allowed men to heat food or water without drawing unwanted attention. Another trick was burying scraps of food waste immediately after meals to prevent the scent from drifting. Civilians may have thought armies ate in neat camp lines, but much of the time survival meant eating half-warmed rations in silence, hidden from sight and smell, because exposure could mean discovery. Sleep discipline in danger. The rhythm of rest was perhaps the hardest adaptation. Soldiers could rarely sleep a full night without interruption. Instead, they learned to rest in short cycles, often napping in rotation with their comrades while one man kept watch. Some trained themselves to fall asleep instantly the moment a safe pause came, a skill honed through exhaustion. Even in the dead of winter, this discipline of short, broken rest kept armies functional. Civilians heard stories of endurance and courage, but they never realized how much depended on mastering the art of sleeping lightly, ready to wake and move in seconds. These survival hacks never made it into propaganda films or government press releases. Wartime governments preferred to portray soldiers as strong, self-sufficient, and fully supplied. Revealing how much men depended on makeshift stoves, shared warmth, or desperate ration tricks might have undermined morale at home. But for the soldiers themselves, these habits were not optional. They were the thin line between life and death. What makes them powerful lessons today is not just their historical context but their timeless relevance. In any situation where resources are limited and conditions harsh, the same ingenuity can still apply. The hidden survival hacks of World War II remind us that history is not only shaped by great battles or famous leaders, it was also shaped in quiet moments where soldiers shared warmth, stretched food, and improvised ways to endure. These are the secrets that kept men alive when the world was falling apart around them. For anyone today, whether a history enthusiast or someone interested in resilience, they remain powerful lessons in human resourcefulness. If you found this deep dive into forgotten wartime survival fascinating, make sure to subscribe to In the Beginning and share this with others who love uncovering the hidden layers of history. There are countless more stories like this waiting to be told, and together, we can keep them alive.